Hey guys, Buckskin Dave here. Well, I'm going to work on this for a change now for a little while. I'm to the point where I've got the lock off and I'm going to start doing, well, I'm going to take the lock apart so that I can finish the surface, and the same with the hammer. The hammer's semi-finished. First thing, as I take this apart, I'm going to work on this trigger to make it as smooth as possible. So the first thing that I want you to look at is, see, all these parts are cast, so they're very rough, and the manufacturer of the lock has smoothed out a lot of the stuff inside there that needs to be. Some of it isn't, and one of the things is this bar that sticks out for your trigger to trip. Okay, it's not smoothed, and if you look really close from monkeying with it in the white, and I'm not sure it's going to focus. Oh yeah, it looks like you can see it. See the shiny spot? That's where the trigger has been hitting that and marking it from working, you know. I mean, that's what you're putting the gun together and you're making things work. So that's just cast and it hasn't been smoothed over. And so what I'm going to do is first I'm going to just see how rough it is with this fine file. And I want to keep the shape of it as best I can. And once I get it to where I can see how rough it really is, if it doesn't have any real big divots in it, I just want to stone it smooth. I want to take the roughness out of it. I don't really want to change any of the geometry. This trigger actually is really good on this one, but this should be smoothed out and the cast roughness taken out of it. Then I'll go to a stone, because a stone will really polish it and make it nice and keep that roundness to it. That'll help trip it too. Yep, that's getting there. And then I have a super fine stone here. And that will polish it. One thing about these stones, they hold a little bit of oil. I keep them oiled, and so that'll really polish that out. That will probably take most of your roughness out of your trigger. I don't recommend messing with anything inside this lock unless you have to. Okay, they are all built very well, and most of this is polished very well and fitted very well. If you have trouble with it, then you can get inside there, but most of the time this, and I'm going to pull the trigger out here and I'll show you one other thing, will do the trick. Also, the geometry, when you're fitting this into the wood, where your trigger plate hits that is very, very critical. If it hits too far to the front of the trigger plate, instead of pushing it up, it's kind of pushing it forward. And also the other way, if it's too far to the back, it's pushing it away instead of up. You want it to where that trigger plate hits and it's pushing straight up for the time it takes to trip the sear and fire the gun. So, okay, so that just needs a little more fouling, and I'll yank that trigger out and we'll take a look at it. Okay. Another surface that's important is this surface right here. This is your top of your trigger, and it has a little bit of an angle to it, and it should, well, I seem to find that it needs a little bit of an angle to it to work the trigger good. This is just filed rough right now because that's the way I left it. I'm going to stone it here. This is how these two meet here. So you could see if it's too far forward, the way this works, you can see the trigger goes this way, pushes that way. If it's, when you inlet all these, if it's too far forward, you can see where it's going to push it forward instead of up. You need it to come in right around here, so it only pushes up and not, see how it moves, it's moving it forward. So that's a matter of inletting. Also, when you inlet, when you put this in, and I like to inlet the lock first, and then I inlet this part second, because this depth that this is in the stock, if your stock is right here, if that changes, it changes where this touches, okay? So if something changes in the depth that this is inletted, it could make it go in more or make it farther out. Further out, what it'll do is give you, as you can see, it'll give you a little play in your trigger before it hits this arm here. If it's in there, if you inlet it too deep, it won't cock because it'll push up against there. So those are things that make a difference. This one here now needs to be honed nice and smooth. Now it's already been filed, so now I'm honing it with the rougher trigger stone. And as soon as that gets the roughness of the file off of that, then we'll go with the smooth stone and get that nice and shiny and smooth. It will stay better that way. It'll actually wear less the more polished it is too. So, and then I'm gonna try to get, there we go. So I'll get these polished. Then it's time to really start taking this apart and finish. Anyway, I got this attached and everything here. And basically you have to drill a hole through and then thread this so that stays up in there. And then sometimes you can make the screw flush. Sometimes it's a little bump in it, but this is a wood surface. All I have to do is just hone that out, and I've done that. So this is all ready to go in there. The one thing you don't want to do when you are polishing these surfaces, it's a polish. You don't want to change the height, because this is going to go back in up against the wood when it was working, when it was in the white and was working. And if you take off too much material here, when this stops, there'll be a gap between this and your trigger bar here. And when that happens, then you'll have a little play in your trigger. So try not to, and it's okay to have just a teensy bit of play, but you don't want too much travel. Anyway, I just got a call from Muskrat, and I forgot that the fur buyer is going to be down at the local taxidermist, and I have some coyotes and some fox that I need to bring down to him. There's not enough to ship, but seeing as how he's coming through, I'll see what his offer is. And then I'll be back here finishing. I want to get this done in the white. Okay, so everything's done, and then I can and fitted, and then I'll start finishing. This is the saddle that holds everything down. Oops, there you go. We don't need to mess with that. This is your sear. And this is the trigger arm. You can see right there that we smoothed out. And it has this sear edge here. We'll get to that in a minute. This has this little fly. This thing right here. Take note how that's in there, because it's got to go back the same way. And also take note where you put it, because I have a couple of extras of them in my toolbox because they get lost really quick. Is you can see that it's not an even, again, working with this in the white and clicking it and all that, you can see there's a shiny spot there where it needs just a little, it's been rubbing just a little bit. This trigger is really good. Normally I wouldn't touch that, but I don't like the looks of it. So what I'll probably do is get a stone and just touch it lightly. Okay, so this is a really fine stone, and I'm going to stay with the angle and just buff that contact point a little bit, and that'll just polish it. You can see now it's getting a little bit more shiny all the way across. And then keep that angle, because that angle's what makes it positive in the when it's in with all the other parts. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to finish that, and I'm going to go ahead and put the maker mark on it and polish this down, and then I'll put it back together and it'll go back in the rifle. So okay, so I went ahead and put it all back together. I got my maker's mark right here, and I went ahead and just dunked it in some bluing stuff for right now, just to protect it until we get it finished. But if I don't get any scratches in it, it's kind of finished. So I want to put that back on, and I have a couple other things to do. I still got to inlet this star, and I got to finish the patch box. But that's it for this episode. Thanks for stopping in. The next episode we'll get on some of the other stuff we got to do here. But until then, you guys have a great day. We'll see you next time.